Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight. I'm a galactic and an intuitive astrologer, and I am here today to talk about the upcoming full moon, which is happening in the sign of Leo on the 12th of February 2025, and it's at 1:53 p.m. in the UK. So adjust your settings accordingly, depending on where you are in the world. So this full moon is happening at 24 degrees, 6 minutes of Leo, with the sun at exactly the same degree in the opposing sign of Aquarius. Now, I always talk about full moons being the completion of a cycle. So, it is the point at which we have the maximum amount of light shining on the surface of the moon. So there is a real sort of energy of wholeness, of completion, of fullness coming through. And with the sign of Leo, that is enhanced even further because for me, Leo, which is the sign that is ruled by the sun, Leo is very much about feeling whole and complete within the self, about feeling so full of love and confidence within the self about who you are and what you are, that you don't need to be anything less than complete. There is no sense of lack when we have really strong Leo in the chart. So this is the sign, this is fixed fire. So, lots of light and energy and pizzazz coming through for sure. It's a highly creative energy. It is very much linked to the heart. And when we have strong Leo, we are always drawn towards heart-centered consciousness and heart opening. It is also a very loud, a very noisy, and very dramatic sign. So I'm being drawn to the phrase, all the world's a stage. And, obviously with full moons, the sun is always shining the light on something that perhaps we can't always see, at other times in the month because the light isn't so forcibly sort of directed and projected on to the moon. But with the moon in Leo and kind of this message coming through, all the world's the stage, is this a time when we're going to be shown how accurate that statement is, or how there may be truth in that statement, obviously depending on your perspective and where you are coming from. But certainly, there's going to be a lot more noise around this full moon, a lot more drama potentially, a lot more fire, a lot more heat, a lot more drive, passion. When we are working with strong Leo, there is a need to be seen. Leo wants an audience, wants to shine bright, wants to show up. There is a real sense of pride, also courage and bravery coming through. And I also always associate Leo with the hero's journey because ultimately Leo reminds us that we are all on this journey, this path to connect with what it is within us that makes us whole. And ultimately, this is about finding and connecting to that self-love, that unconditional love that we are all meant to have for ourselves. But, in so many ways and so many forms, it is lacking, if the truth be told. And it is this lack of self-love that creates so many of the problems in our world, in my opinion. So very sort of full moon, full of flair, full of flamboyance, very powerful, very forceful for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes up around this full moon. Now, obviously, with the full moon, because we have the sun in the opposing sign, this is about integrating the two opposing energies because, the sun is very powerful in Aquarius because the sun is highlighting the Aquarian themes. And obviously, we talked about the themes of Aquarius at the new moon, but this is about really starting to see how you can feel whole as part of the wider collective, how you can step into all of yourself to support the group energy, to support humanity as a whole. This is about being able to connect to that inner flame, that inner light, and making sure that you give it space to breathe and to grow and to expand. And, here I'm being shown the image of the line of matches, and it only takes the lighting of one match to light the entire row because that energy is obviously, and the fire is going to spread. So we have the energy, the air through Aquarius fanning the fire potentially, making sure that as we do connect to that inner spark and it grows into a flame, that we can make that flame grow even stronger and brighter. So let's have a look at the chart and see what other connections we can make. So here we have got the chart for the 12th of February. You can see the moon down here in Leo, opposite the sun in Aquarius. And you can also see that the sun has got some neighbors here. So Ceres, the goddess of the harvest and of fertility, and Mercury, the messenger, all sitting very close together in the third decan of Aquarius. Have the square to Uranus in Taurus, which is creating this T square, Uranus, Moon, Sun, which is very powerful. And I will come back to that. But let's first of all talk about Ceres and Mercury. So Mercury is obviously always going to have something to say, a message to share, something to talk about. So when we have Mercury in Aquarius, this is very much about information coming through really quickly, linked to the collective, linked to humanity, linked to the group in some way, feeding off the fire and the passion and the drama that the moon in Leo is creating. And with Ceres here as well, this is really beautiful because I feel that the sun and Ceres are really working together to remind us that, we have to have hope, and that hope builds the platform for our future. Ceres is very linked to rebirth, to nature, to the cycles of life, bringing us back to what it is that is simple in our world, back to nature effectively, back to the strength and the power of Gaia and how she is supporting humanity at this time, as are we working with her and her energy. Ceres is also known to be a gatekeeper, so will show up at times of transition, almost paving the way, holding our hands, making sure that, nurturing us, soothing us, caring for us as we go through these times of chaos, because Aquarius it can be chaotic because it is ruled by Uranus, and particularly as Uranus is creating this T square with this full moon. There is no doubt that a lot of the drama and a lot of the noise and the bright lights that are coming through Leo are being created and triggered and instigated by the square to Uranus. And because the sun is in Aquarius, this is drama, noise, and chaos that is very much linked to us at a collective level. So it does feel that, whatever is happening, whatever is on the center stage, whatever we're being shown at this time that is really loud, really noisy, and quite flamboyant potentially, is absolutely affecting us all in some way. So that is definitely something to look out for. Now we have Mars still in retrograde at 17 degrees of Cancer, is in a trine to Saturn, who also happens to be exactly pretty much conjunct this body here, Nessus. Now, Nessus is not an energy that I have really explored in any depth at all prior to yesterday, but I got this real sort of intuitive nudge to sort of add in some of the asteroids and dwarf planets and minor bodies into the chart of the client that I was working on yesterday. And, wouldn't you know, Nessus is right there next to Saturn at 18 degrees in a trine to Mars. And obviously, if we look down here, we can see Vesta and Hecate are also adding to the water energy in a slightly wider trine in Scorpio. So they are definitely playing a part. But how do we interpret Mars trine Saturn conjunct Nessus? So Nessus is said to have quite, how would we describe it? Quite negative associations and archetypes and themes, particularly in astrology, all linked to abuse, to trickery, to poison, to betrayal. And often, when we see Nessus in the chart, it can indicate themes of abuse, and how interesting that Nessus is right next to Saturn, which is ultimately, making sure, particularly in the sign of Pisces, that there are karmic repercussions for any themes of abuse or betrayal or poisoning that perhaps have taken place. Obviously, in Pisces, it is not always immediately apparent. It's not always obvious what has happened. There can be blurred lines, there can be confusion, things can be hidden, but Pisces is also very karmic and it is about ending. So it does feel as if Saturn, as the taskmaster, here to make sure we learn the lessons, is very much sort of drawing our attention to themes linked to Nessus. Now, there is also connections with Nessus to the clearing of ancestral themes, ancestral trauma, ancestral wounding, and ancestral abuse. So again, this may be highlighting something like almost like a coming of age or a comeuppance, or, it is time, it is very much divine timing for these things to be addressed. And of course, Mars in Cancer is adding a real sort of nurturing and protective energy, but also requiring that we come home to the self and connect with our inner light. And when you add in Vesta as well, Vesta is this energy, this beautiful energy, divine, feminine, goddess energy of the hearth, of the home, that inner flame that cannot be put out. Vesta will shine her light in the darker times to make sure that we don't give up, that we keep going, that we know that the light can never be extinguished. And I talked about Vesta being close to Hecate before in a previous video. It does feel, obviously in astrology and all these archetypes, they work at so many different levels. So I'm getting, again, still, I know I keep banging on about it, but really strong themes of the witch wound and almost repercussions, and I want to say compensation. That's not quite the right word that I'm looking for, but certainly, for all of those who have experienced trauma and abuse, even if it has been hidden or it's hidden in the subconscious, then this is a time when it is starting to come to light and starting to be healed. And often part of that healing comes through the understanding when something is finally understood, and there is accountability to be had. And of course, if we look at the moon here at 24 degrees of Leo, the moon is in an exact trine to Eris, who is always going to shout up and speak up for those who have been marginalized or treated badly, undermined, cast out. And Eris in Aries, obviously she's been there for so long because she's got such a slow transit and such a slow orbit, but she is feeling the rage in Aries. And obviously, with this square to Mars as well, Mars in Cancer isn't quite as strong and as motivated, but there is a real sort of sense of the spiritual warrior coming through, and a need to cleanse, a need to protect, a need to go within to find that safe space and that sanctuary. So again, that might be something that we need to do at this time in order to try and avoid all the noise and the drama and the potential clashes that are going on. But because this is a trine between the moon and Eris, and also with Chiron here as well, the wounded healer, finally understanding perhaps why where the wounds have come from. And also in Aries, taking responsibility for the self rather than sort of adopting, a blame attitude or shunning responsibility. This is about accepting that actually, with the support of the moon in Leo, shining that light on the wholeness of the self, Chiron, the wounded healer, is going to start to get the message that actually, yes, it's okay, even if you do feel that parts of you are broken or missing or not good enough. The journey is about becoming whole again, in spite of that, and stepping into all of the self in a very sovereign, bold and beautifully bright way. Just before I go on to the fixed star connections, we have got obviously Neptune is conjunct the North Node, which is something that we've been talking about for quite some time, but the North Node has now moved past Neptune on its way back in retrograde motion through Pisces. But for me, this is reminding us that our way through, our way to our ultimate sort of and our greatest potential and our greatest soul growth is by transcending the suffering, transcending that connection to sort of the lower realms, and to attachment, and really having compassion for all, to being to have, and also about having faith and stepping beyond, stepping into all that is, trusting in a higher purpose, trusting in a higher plan, really holding on to a vision of what is possible. So really, really beautiful energies there as well. And the one last thing I will say is Black Moon Lilith here at 2 degrees Scorpio, very close to Haumea. Black Moon Lilith, which is the true calculation in an exact square to Pluto, is absolutely forcing through and right and bringing to the surface all that collective shadow that has been hidden, that has been beneath the surface, hidden away. And where there are themes of repression, where there are themes of sitting or being forced to stay in the shadows, this is very much coming to light. And through that process, it's so healing. And with the proximity to Haumea as well, which is all about regeneration, cutting through illusions so that we can create space for something new to come in. It is just so, so beautiful. And there's some really obvious themes coming through. One final thing I will mention is the fact that asteroid the Sphinx is in an exact trine to Chiron and sextile Saturn. Again, the Sphinx is very ancient, sort of mystic energy, connected to ancient civilizations, but it always kind of comes with a riddle or a puzzle or a question, and we have to sort of ask the right questions to be able to get the right answers and to be able to move forward. So I really love the energy of the Sphinx. I'm going to call her she, because whenever I tune into her, I get a really strong feminine wisdom coming through, despite of how the Sphinx may have been portrayed. you know she is helping us to sort of access that healing energy that comes from our ancient past, our ancestors potentially, or ancient parts of ourselves that we are unlocking. And with the sextile to Saturn and to Nessus as well, it does feel as if there is new information, new understanding being brought to light that has got links to abuse, to poisons, to toxins, to betrayal, and that Saturn is actually saying, right, we need to step up now and make sure that people are accountable for what has taken place. So some really, really interesting and insightful themes coming through this chart. So as usual, the second part of this video is going to be dedicated to exploring some of the cosmic energies and the fixed stars that are coming through the chart. And, one of the biggest ones that stands out is the fact that the moon is conjunct Hydra, Alphard. Now, it is slightly out in terms of orb. Normally, we would use a 2-degree orb. I think this goes to slightly less than 3, but it is still very, very powerful, particularly when we take into account that we are working with the energy of the snake, the serpent, in terms of the Chinese year that we are in. And obviously, Alphard is very much linked to serpent energy because it is the water snake. So Alphard is often seen as the lone star. A star, because of the geography of the constellation that it sits in, a star that sits very much on its own. But the kind of themes that come through this lone star is very much about not being influenced by what is going on outside, not having to follow the crowd. Obviously, in Leo, with the opposition of Aquarius, the sun in Aquarius, often we do feel that we have to follow the crowd, that we have to go along with what is being said or required. This is about conforming to fit in, to be part of the group. But when we have the moon in Leo, it is about having the courage to stand up and actually say, it's okay. It's not that I'm against the group, but this is what I feel. This is my truth. This is my sort of heart center. This is what I know to be true. And, the difference, the impact, and the power that has as an individual, as part of the collective. So with Alphard, we have the courage to be ourselves, to stand in our truth, to be sovereign, to not sort of have to conform and go along with what is required, what the state requires necessarily. It is also about the energy of coming into the heart center and having a huge heart awakening, which I feel, you know, Uranus is going to move back towards an exact square with Alphard, and I will be coming on to talk about the energy of the 27 and all the activations with Alphard that are coming up over the coming months. But this feels like the start of it again. We've already had the exact square, but because Uranus has been in retrograde, we're going to get another opportunity to work with this activation, with this activating energy. So this for me is about heart activations, huge awakening to heart consciousness, shedding layers, releasing, letting go, also the ability to walk in the dark and the shadow. And obviously, with the light of the moon in Leo, we have the courage, we have that inner light, we have that inner flame through Vesta as well, just guiding the way for us to walk through what might be particularly dark times, but knowing that the light cannot go out. So that is a really, really beautiful theme coming through. We also have Mercury in opposition to Alphard along with the Sun and Ceres. So again, these energies are really, really potent and powerful at this time. Jupiter at 12 degrees of Gemini is still conjunct Aldebaran, which is the one of the royal stars linked to Archangel Michael. I've been talking about this star quite a lot lately. I see this as Archangel Michael coming along with his sword of truth and just cutting through all illusions, cutting away anything that needs to be shed, which of course, Alphard is helping us to do, along with the snake energy as the backdrop to 2025. We still also have Uranus in a conjunction to Capulus in the Perseus constellation. Capulus obviously representing the hero's journey, which comes through very strongly with the Leo moon, but also the sword as well, cutting through, again, illusions so that we can let go, so that we can release, that we can free ourselves. And with Neptune and the North Node still conjunct Pegasus, shit, this again is about releasing us from the chains that have kept us bound, have kept us trapped. Sometimes at a very subconscious level, not even with awareness that we were trapped, but this feels like a time to really claim our sovereignty through the Leo full moon and to claim our freedom as well through the sun in Aquarius, and freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of mind. This is about freeing from a set of mind, a mindset potentially with Mercury in Aquarius opposing Alphard in this square to Uranus. So there are some really profound and very powerful themes throughout this chart, both in the traditional sense and the galactic sense. Now, Lilith at 2 degrees of Scorpio is, of course, conjunct the Shapley attractor. Again, this energy is always about stripping away anything that is not based in truth and integrity, allowing the masks to fall, even the masks in the deep shadows, where they have been hidden. Again, this is coming to light with the square to Pluto. And we have some really interesting energy in terms of the nodal transit, because the node is now approaching a square to Safe in the Orion constellation, and also galactic center at 27 degrees of Sagittarius, and Polaris, the North Star, the guiding star in Gemini. So this is really interesting again, and it just continues the themes of transmutation, of shape shifting, of shedding skins, of taking flight, being able to rise up to see the bigger picture. But with the approaching square to Safe, in particular in the Orion constellation, this star is very much linked to duality, but also because Safe is the sword. So again, we have this repeating theme, this repeating image of the sword cutting through illusion. Now, with Safe, there is also a link to shadow eating and shadow hunting, and to the brilliance of this star being hidden in the shadows, which again is coming through other aspects. But Safe requires us to really do the shadow work, to face what lies hidden in the shadow, in order that we can step into the wholeness of ourselves. This is about integrating parts that we have hidden, parts that we have shied away from, parts that we've perhaps seen, as shameful or lacking in some way. And when we start to do that and start to see that, the parts that we may have seen as or regarded as less than or negative to some extent or in some way, that they are part of us and that ultimately they are seeking to come back to us in order to become whole again, which is really ultimately the whole role of this full moon. So with the nodal kind of square here with safe, forcing us to see our hidden aspects of self and to cut through any illusions or ties that have maybe have created a slightly, I don't know, a sense of illusion or untruth or blurred lines and confusion, particularly obviously with the high degree Pisces energy, which can create that. This is about cutting through that in order that we can free ourselves and let go and rise up and start to fly. And obviously, we've got the Pegasus energy coming through as well. It really is absolutely stunning. Safe not only in a square to the nodes, but trine Mercury in Aquarius, trine the Sun in Aquarius, trine Ceres in Aquarius, and in a wider square to Saturn in Pisces. And obviously, Saturn is going to start moving towards the exact square, which again may be a very interesting time. The very last thing I want to draw attention to is the fact that the Sun and the Moon in this T square with Uranus are also in a T square with Hadar, which is Beta Centauri. So this is a really, really beautiful star, which really draws attention to collaboration, to connection with others, to standing together, to cooperation, but also to unconditional love. Because when we're talking about Hadar, there is this sense that loving everything that lives, everything with a consciousness is as natural as breathing is to us. And, the thought that we wouldn't do that is completely against everything that Hadar stands for. So I feel, with this opposition with Hadar and Uranus and the Sun and the Moon really sort of highlighting and playing a role on their axis in sort of creating this grand fixed cross in essence, this is about reminding us or drawing attention to the fact that, we need to awaken to other ways of being. And the Hadarians are very much showing us the way to do this. And there is another star which I was drawn to very recently when I was working on a client's chart, which I'm not even sure I can pronounce it. It is Alpha Serpentis, that's the easy bit, Unukalahai. To be fair, I think I get most of the pronunciations for the fixed stars pretty much wrong consistently. So I'm not going to beat myself up about that one. But it is at 22 degrees of Scorpio. And that is significant because this star energy is also playing a part in this fixed grand cross in terms of galactic energies. So this star, again, we have the serpent energy here again, squaring Alphard, really reminding us of the importance of shadow work, of transformation, of having to face dark truths potentially, and about how that is such a big part of our human existence is about walking in the shadow, facing things that make us uncomfortable, because that is where the growth lies. It also represents often someone or a soul or a story that is linked to the carrying of collective karma, which, is tying in so strongly to all the other themes I've brought to light. And it can help us deal with deep transformation after adversity. So again, yeah, I say this a lot, but I just find that astrology, and when you start to work with the archetypes and bring through the messages and sort of really tune in to what a lot of these stars and the signs and, all the archetypes are kind of bringing together, it just blows my mind in terms, because of where we are, where we've come from, where we know we have to get to, and the processes that we are going through in order to reach where we're going to, if that makes sense. So I'm going to leave it there. But I think, well, I hope you're getting the impression that this is a really powerful full moon. And oh, yes, have I said that before? I pretty much say that every time, I know, but we are in these remarkable, unprecedented times, and the astrology just keeps coming up to validate that time and time and time again. So I'm going to leave it there. I would invite you, if you are interested in working with me and exploring your chart, looking at the energies that you have natally or in transit, that is something else we can do. I invite you to look at my website, spiralbright.co.uk. And I also want to say, how grateful I am, if you've got this far, you're still watching, for everybody that watches my content, particularly if you can like the video, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, it's free, and it will help me extend my reach. It will help me to grow the channel. Share the video if you know people that you feel will find value in it. And if you are getting value out of my content, obviously I do this, in addition to my paid client work, but it does take time. There's time involved in sort of researching and bringing my notes together and filming and editing and uploading. So I do have a super thanks button on my YouTube channel now, and I am absolutely so grateful for any contributions or donations that anybody feels called or drawn to make. So I just wanted to share that as well. But thank you. My dog's obviously had enough. Thank you as always for watching, and I will be back with you very soon.